to bring into your heart one woman, even if it's just one, a mother, a friend, a sister in your life now, a child in your life, that whose love and beauty and care for you brought you closer to God.
So, sister, I so believe in you. So, sister, you are strong and wise. Oh, sister, whatever you're going through, I am here with you, and I will see you through to the other side. Oh, hold out your hands, I'll crumble to the earth, whatever it takes for you to thrive. Your body knows like a river flows, and she will see you through to the other side. Your body knows like a river flows, and she will see you through to the other side. Your body knows like a river flows, and she will see you through to the other side.
Let's all take a deep breath together. Gather our heart and our energy and our body here into this space today. Dear God, I want to say thank you for every single woman that took out the time in her day to be here with herself and to be here with you and to be here with each other. It becomes a greater honor every single time that I'm given the opportunity to be with these women, to hold space for these women, to learn from these women, to see these women. God, I'm asking that you support every woman on this call today to just be a little bit more available for you to speak to her, to speak through her, to touch her heart, potentially in a place and in a way that you've never touched it before, or maybe she's never let you touch it. God, can you move some miracles and some magic in this room today? Can you help these women get excited about that? God, I'm asking through today's message that we remember that our relationship with you is meant to be bridged into our real lives and meant to be bridged into our real relationships and to be shared and to be rejoiced about. God, would you help bring a little bit more aliveness into each one of these women's hearts and lives today? We say thank you because we know that you are with us. You are within us. You are as us. You surround us. In every way, we say thank you. And I ask that we leave today just a little bit more full, that we can pour this remembrance into the other women that we encounter today, the other women that we touch, that we can pour these life-giving waters and share them. Thank you and amen. And ladies, I want to stay dropped in here for just a moment. If you want to keep your eyes closed, you can. If you want to open them, you can. And just see if you can soften your body as you come into this space. Most of you on this call, this is not your first time interacting with me or this ministry. And I'm definitely going to get emotional and cry a lot today. I have a really near and dear message on my heart today. And for the women that A lot of the women that are on this call today are women in our ordination program that I've asked to be here today to share their hearts and their stories. And for the women that have shown up to do that today, I want you to imagine that this service being recorded today has the potential to reach hundreds of women in their homes, in their cars, inside of their lives, that the voice that you shared today, that the message that you shared today, that the love that you shared today has the potential to ripple out into the world in a way that we can't even imagine. And so I first just want to say thank you to each of you for being here. And for the women that are here today that are not a part of our ordination and that are going to be watching this in the future, as I was preparing for this message today, I was guided to just let it be like truly organically and authentically from my heart, from the deepest part of my heart. And what I want to say to open this space is that sometimes God provides love for us in a way that God doesn't take credit for. And one of the greatest gifts that I've been given in my life that I talk about all the time, and I just can't find enough words to celebrate and to rejoice about it, is the amount and quality of women that constantly surround me in my life. The quality of women, the love of women that have been given to me through mentorship, through community that I've been able to be held in and be sisters in, and now to have the opportunity and the honor for this to be my professional work, to hold women inside of this ministry of women that I respect so much and that I love so much. And this aspect of my life has really been, like, really truly been one of the greatest gifts of love that God has given me. And I believe that we're seeing more and more and more of these kinds of communities of safe women. And my prayer is that today we just get to set another reference point for any woman watching this, that these kind of women exist, this kind of community exists, and God wants to love you through wonderful relationships, through women that can see you, through women that are also asking the same questions, that are also having their heart cracked open by their devotional walk, that want to be transparent with you, that want to be vulnerable with you, that want to hold you, that want to walk with you, that want to celebrate you, that want to see you win, and that want to rally around you in the name and in devotion to truth. There are women that want to be here as teammates with you. Even if we don't know you by name, there are already women that are rallying around you and standing for the walk that you're walking. And so if you're coming to this service today, and maybe you're a woman that is currently walking the devotional walk and you have questions about God, that's really, a lot of the kind of thing that we're attracting here. You have a question about God, or about what you believe about God, or where you stand with things, or your security in a certain part of your walk with God. And you have questions and you're looking for answers and you're wanting to go deeper and you're wanting to orient to your faith in a different way. I want you to know that you are not the only woman that is asked these questions. And in fact, there are at least dozens of women already here in this ministry, in this space, that have likely asked very similar questions and have powerful testimonies of the way that God has been with them and has responded to them and has held them as they've done so. And so you guys can open your eyes if you're still closed. So my intention for today and my desire today is to give these women that have been a part of our ordination school a moment to just share their hearts and their voices and share the stories of the way that some of them have struggled in their devotional walk. Some of them have come all the way through that struggle and have had a very powerful response from God. Some of them are still in the mix of some level of confusion, and there's a testimony about how God is with them in that. and just give the receiving community more texture of what this gets to look like other than just me. When women gather, magic happens, and our stories are the most powerful thing that we can offer as a gift to the women that we love. So thank you each for being here. And yeah, the only other thing I have to say before I start prompting the beautiful women from the ordination that have showed up today, thank you so much, is that, yeah, if you're unfamiliar with our ordination school, just so you have context, our ordination school is basically this space where women who are either really desiring a deeper relationship with God and a full-on initiation of healing their relationship with God and are embarking on that journey to, be held in that, or are in a place where they are training in the professional skill set of ministry. It's kind of both. That's what that program is, and that's where these women that are going to be sharing today are coming from. So every woman that's sharing today is in our current ordination school. And you can learn more about that if you're interested in the notes of wherever you found this video. Okay, so are we ready? Yeah, cool. All right, I wrote down some questions somewhere as a reference point. Okay. So what I would actually love to do first. What I would love to do first for the women on this call that are here, both not in the ordination program and in the ordination program, and if you're watching the recording of this, wherever you might be doing that, I would love if you could drop a comment. So here in the chat box, if you're live on this call, or if you found this on school, maybe drop it in the comments on school, or you can even DM me a one-liner. But I would love to know right now if you could be totally transparent and know that we don't have any agenda to evangelize you into any particular belief system or orientation with your faith. If you had a moment to be actually fucking honest about what is here with your relationship with God, what is one of the questions that you are asking right now about who God is, what God is to you, how you can get closer to God, etc.? What is one of the questions that you have about your faith in your devotional walk right now? If you're here on this call, you can drop it in the chat. There's no stupid question. So just to start listing a few, because maybe you have similar ones, how can I know that you're real? Deepening into how can I trust? How can I be a servant for you? What else, guys? If you are in a place in your relationship with God where you feel like you don't have any questions, I would gently challenge you to ask, how present are you being with that relationship? How can I hear you more deeply? How can I surrender even more to your love? can I fuck this up if I don't, if I don't, if I do the wrong thing or make the wrong choice? Can I screw myself out of what God has for me? Yeah. I think I still ask that to myself sometimes too. Can I choose out of this perfectly ordained path that God has for my life? How much power do I have to mess that up? How can I bring devotion into my business? Yeah, how can I bring God more into my business? Yeah, these are all really beautiful questions. Anybody have a question that's like actually scary to admit? Maybe nobody on this call. Maybe if you're watching this, you're really asking, what do you even believe about God? Or, you know, in terms of genderizing God, is God a masculine face, a feminine face? You know, what is your orientation and how do you go deeper with it? Okay. So I just wanted to give space. Well, welcoming you into my life, dismantle my identity, my relationships, and my life. Yeah, that's a hard one too. Raise your hand if you've ever been afraid of that, knowing that, or being afraid that if you go deeper, that it might start to stir things up of the things that you love. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, so these kinds of questions are they're beautiful, you know, they're the invitations of growth in our life. And also, they're the most delicate and fragile and sometimes destabilizing things that we can possibly ask ourselves, because an answer to them would transform everything about the way that we walk. And so, my point that I want to make before I open the floor to the sisters here is that one, it's really okay to ask the questions. And it's really normal to feel like it's unsafe to ask the questions that maybe threaten your current belief or reality around who you think God is. Okay. And I want to give some support and validation through our sisters' voices today. So, what I would love to do, we have 6, 7 of you who have committed to sharing. Just doing some mental math. All right, so we've got like 4 or 5 minutes. I'll put a timer on for each sister. And I'm going to prompt you guys with a few questions. And if you guys, for the sister sharing, if you kind of see me put a hand up, it just means that we're getting close to time. And to just gently start to wrap up. Okay, we have 1 or 2 more questions. It's actually scary to admit my questioning and trust, since God always shows how much I can trust. How can I only hear your voice in moments of doubt and uncertainty? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm just gonna let you guys actually step forward as it feels right in timing. So whoever feels called to share first, you can unmute yourself and then I'll kind of prompt you with a question. Cool? Allison.
Hello.
Hi, beautiful.
Hi. Sorry I might be yawning a little bit. I'm still a little jet lagged, but I'm here.
Beautiful. Are you home? Did you just arrive home?
Yeah, I just arrived back in Canada, not yesterday, the day before. So my body is like, what is time? Where am I?
Welcome home.
Thank you.
I feel like when I showcase women, like I want to just like introduce you and tell people what you do and how awesome you are. Like Allison's this amazing businesswoman and she's brilliant and she's like just awesome. And like I want to just let you feel their hearts and not like give you some identity about who these women are, because their hearts are the most beautiful, special part about them. So this is my sister Allison. And Allison, the one thing that I would actually love to ask you is so what I know about your history spiritually is that you really started at a young age and you were in the ceremonial space and you were kind of introduced to a lot of like this connection to spirit from like the jump in your life. So this is not a new conversation for you whatsoever, like the concept of devotion and walking this path. And so what I want to know is, at the intersection of maybe when you and I started connecting and prayer started becoming such a big part of your life, what were some of the doubts or uncertainties or big questions that you were just like, I don't know about this?
Mm. Yeah, this is such a beautiful question. I think when we started connecting, it was a space that I was a bit disconnected from my faith and spirituality. And just for context, yeah, like I think I got welcomed into like a very ceremonial path from like 8 and 11. And a lot of the context, particularly like in Native American ceremonies and plant medicine ceremonies. Although it wasn't maybe like Christian or like the typical religious beliefs, there was still, I feel like, a lot of like, this is the way things are. And I rebelled against it for a for a period. So when we reconnected, I was asking myself, like, who is God to me, and what does that relationship look like to me? Um, And, I think I had a lot of like confusion around like, can I get it wrong? Is God mad at me? Like, where is the intersection between devotional, like some protocols, and like, I think that fine line of protocols without rigidity. And I think I'm still asking myself that question a little bit more clearly. But I think I'm less in this space of like, I'm doing something wrong, or it has to look exactly like this, or just because someone else's relationship with it looks like this, doesn't mean that my can't look a little bit differently. So I think that was a lot of my questioning of what's my relationship with God. Not, kind of, you have these teachings and they're given to you, and I'm so grateful for my elders. I think that's was beautiful part of my life. I was initiated by elders and crones for a long time, but I then think there was a part of me that was like, where do you take the teachings and then actually embody them and also refine your own relationship? And is my relationship, I think the word that comes to mind is enough. Yeah. Yeah.
What an awesome experience, because not many of us can say that we have had elders to learn from.
Mm.
And like what I'm hearing is that it was actually the process of, and you can track this in everyone's like
Mhm.
relationship with God, it was the process of giving yourself the full power to choose that
Mhm.
actually brought you into something solid in that relationship.
Yeah. I think I almost needed a period of like rebelling, I would think, of like, no, forget this. I'm going to forget everything my elders told me. And then, yeah, having that sovereignty of like, wait, this is actually what I'm choosing, um, from like not that it wasn't authentic, but from more of like a mature place rather than almost being initiated so young. I needed that period of rebelling to actually make a very conscious choice.
Yeah. So it was
Yeah.
it was like what I keep hearing was that it was like the fact that it was your choice is what equated to that spiritual maturity.
Yes, definitely.
What was the role of prayer in that, if any?
I think it always played a big part. I mean, I've been praying. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think it was a little unconscious. Like even during that time of rebelling, I was still praying, but it was more this like at a distance, or like there wasn't presence. There wasn't a quality of presence. That's what I'll say. But I was still praying. I was still doing my rituals. It just maybe was kind of from this place of like, I'm gonna hold you a little far away and not be very present with it. And man, I think during that little bit period of rebellion and like testing things out, it was the hardest time, yeah, in my life. And I remember there was lots of moments where I was just praying to God to help me back on a path of devotion. And yeah, I think that's when we connected. And it was
Do you
like,
feel like you were punished at all, like punished or withheld from it all because you decided to keep God at arm's length for a period of time?
I never, no, I don't think I ever felt like that. I felt like, I think this is the thing about, maybe more in the plant medicine ceremony community and like the Native American tradition. But I don't think I grew up with this like God's punishing you. Like I've never had that experience or been told that or taught that in a way. It was always very compassionate. And I think so I was like, even in those darkest moments, I was like, I'm still loved. I think it's more just like a like almost like a fatherly figure, like, I love you, but like what's going on right now, girl? Like what's happening? Let's talk. Like yeah, like a dad that's like, I love you, but we got to sit down and have a talk. So I think
Yeah.
it felt a little bit more like that. I think I still felt loved, but I think it was almost like a little bit of like, okay, come on, let's come back. But it wasn't from like a place of punishment. I think it was more me self punishing myself and like trauma of why it was kind of so dark.
So, to anyone listening that might be in a position of needing to take space from what they've known for so long, or what they've been trained in, or what, like the spaces that they've come from, what would be your one piece of advice for those women listening?
Hmm. I think what I wish I would have done is I think I was questioning a lot of things from, yeah, that place of like unhealthy rebellion. And I think that there was some medicine to that, which was more of, yeah, the questioning. But I think if I look back, not that I would have changed everything because I'm really happy with where everything led. However, I think it would have been a gentler experience if I brought in more of like a gentle questioning, because I think that period of questioning is really important of like, what have I learned? Is this true for me? But it was more from this place of rebellion. And I think what would have made it softer is, yeah, just this kind of gentle inquiry rather than what's wrong, what's right. Like it's so confusing, and it was confusing, but um, I think I just abandoned everything. Whereas I think there was a more of a middle ground approach that I could have taken, and just in constant asking of like consent with myself of like, well, what feels true to me? I think that's that question that is can be really helpful, is like what feels true to me, and exploring that more and more and more. And I think, I was receiving support when we were doing Devoted. So also having spaces where you can have conversations openly about your questioning, I think is so important, because at the beginning I felt I basically left my entire community. And I went from having 100 people where we were a big community in like spiritual devotion to having no one, because there wasn't a lot of space to ask a lot of those questions. So I think having community where you can ask questions is essential from like a non-judgmental place. Because I think that not having that at the start of that little period of space is why it got a little dark, because I just didn't have anyone to talk to. So yeah, utilize support, be really gentle with yourself. I also think don't rush the process. I think, like, okay, what's that clear answer of what my relationship is with God? And I think it's a continuation of unlearning and learning, and allowing that to be a process rather than when is this going to be done? Like when is the questioning? When am I going to get to this place where I feel solid again? But rather feeling into that, you know, this beautiful process again and again and again.
So beautiful. Thank you, Allison.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, that's one of the craziest things about when I say deconstruction, I don't mean from Christianity, I mean from a shift in your lens, especially if you have a lot of strong community that has a very specific spiritual orientation. Questioning those beliefs or taking time to do so often means a break from your environment and your community, which is heartbreaking because that's your support system, So it can be scary. All right, who feels called to go next? Okay.
Hi.
Hi, baby. Hi. I'm so happy. Okay, so gosh, there's so many things I want to ask you. Right. So just as some context, Kayla was traditionally, I would say, like, actually, you put it in your words. Tell us a bit about where you were at in your faith, and then the kinds of, oh, there she is. The kinds of things that started opening up, and some of the big, like, oh my gosh, questions that were happening when you and I first connected.
Okay. So my spiritual background, I was raised like Southern Baptist Christian. And then I have sort of some unique spiritual giftings that weren't really explained, for me, growing up in that way. Uh, and so when I started having, I guess, like my first spiritual awakening, I had lots of questions. Then I went more super new age, more Eastern, learned a lot of things. But then also ran into issues there, ended up having some powerful encounters with Jesus that then brought me back to Christianity. Um, and I kind of settled in there and thought I'd finally like clicked in. Um, and but I sort of had the knowledge from sort of like both backgrounds, I guess you would say, and was trying to like weave in between both perspectives, sort of. And was kind of more of like a Christian mystic that, was very open to psychedelics and plant medicine and chakras and yoga and, all of these things. So I was in an interesting place, but with like a strong like Christian fundamentalist background. And then I started sitting with ayahuasca and having just, yeah, like major deconstructions through that, where I was just like, yeah, actually, like religion makes no sense on a lot of levels. Like there's elements of it that are really good and helpful that brought me to where I was at. But then there were elements of it that I was just like, yeah, that doesn't sound like the God I know. But there's so much programming around like black and white, right and wrong, do the right thing or suffer, that even if you're super open-minded, when you've been exposed to that programming your entire life, there is that fear around even asking the questions. So, yeah, I was in a space of having a lot of questions, a lot of shame and programming coming up, like wondering if I was doing the right thing, if I was on the right path. And I actually had been praying for 2 years since I had a prayer practice, and I had like a very intimate relationship with God, and had, experienced miracles and deep moments of, presence and connection with God. But I just was like, there's more. Like I wanted it to be deeper. Like I wanted to like fall in love, with my creator, like with spirit. And just, I wanted it to be, I've been asking for that. And so actually on our first call, like we went into deconstruction and all these conversations, and it got like really crunchy for me at points where I was like, I literally had to be like, breathing in and leaning into the discomfort of like, these questions are triggering my nervous system, and all of my conditioning. And I uh I heard God say to me, like, this is it. And I was like, what? And God was like, it's not what you thought it would look like. And it's not in the form that you expected it to come in. But like, if you want to go deeper, like, this is it. Like, you gotta take me out of every box you ever put me in, even like the Christian box, even the new age box, and I was like, okay, so that was it.
Can we just like highlight what you just shared there? Because I feel like that's kind of like if I had to have one spokesperson for deconstruction, it would be Kayla. and like how just because of for no other reason than the amount of felt heartbreak I've been able to feel from you, if you as you've walked this, and your willingness to look at every single dark part, and the amount of grace that you have had as you've done so has been so beautiful. And it wasn't just one background you were deconstructing from. Like that's the piece I want to highlight. It's like you've got it. What you just said was so beautiful. We need to put that on the front of our website. It's like, take me out of every box you've ever put me in, including the new age one. And I say new age is like I really don't like that term, because I don't agree with even using that term, but like, you know, whatever social identity that we put onto different ways of relating to God, we can have to take our intimate relationship with God out of that social identity box in order for it to be real. So thank you for that line. That was mind blowing to me. Thank you. So what would you have to say? Actually, can you tell me a little bit about, I have two more questions for you. Can you share with me a little bit about, you shared a little bit about your experience in the ordination program. Can you share with me a little bit about how being with other women in this process has impacted you? If there's anything you feel on your heart to share about that.
um yes. So for me, I've realized through this process and through sitting with plant medicines that a lot of my God problems were actually relational problems, meaning that my wounding from relationships with parents and influential people were actually like in my childhood were being projected onto God and how I was relating to God. And so having a space where, just like you were saying, like a lot of times God provides love for you and doesn't take the credit, having that environment where all of these maternal figures, because it's really like the mother wound that's been highlighted for me, that's showing up mostly in my relationship with God, having women that are just like nurturing and loving and unconditional and safe, has been really healing. And just having a space where it's okay to ask these questions and to not be sure, and to hear that I'm not alone. It's like we have these conversations where we talk about things that nobody's talking about, that everybody's scared to talk about. And one person opens up and then another, and then, next thing you know, you don't feel alone. And it's just a really beautiful group of people that all have a lot of magic and some great gifts and things to offer. And just, a space where everyone's devoted to love. And it's just a completely different experience.
And finally, what would you say to any woman that's walking through, that might be in that space of not just like kind of ambiguity with God, but like really in that, oh my gosh, my whole world is shaking and crashing down because I don't know where I stand with things. What would you have to say to them? One piece of advice or something that you think they need to know.
Breathe. Just breathe. It's gonna be okay. Like, you're gonna come through it. God's got you. God will. Even if you're in that space where you're like, I'm not sure who you are, I'm not sure what the structure is, like lean into what you do know. For me, it was, there were times, because I feel like I've deconstructed multiple times in my process. And it's like, there have been times where I'm like, I don't freaking know anything except that I believe you are real and I believe that you care, And so in the upheaval and the questioning and the uncertainty and the instability of all that, lean in to whatever it is that you know about God. and hold on to that.
Thank you, Kayla. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. We are so lucky to have you. Okay, so I've already decided that these services are 60 minutes in length. Today, we are throwing all the rules out the window. If you gotta go, you can go, including my ordination ladies, but we're just gonna keep sharing in live time and trust that what is said is what needs to be received from the women that eventually watch this. All right, who would like to share next? Lena. I'm obsessed with you guys. You're all I think about. You're all I think about. You're like all I talk about. You guys are so beautiful. It's painful. I'm obsessed with all of you. All right, go ahead. Oh, it's me that's prompting you. Sorry. Oh my gosh. Okay. The first thing that I want to ask is, because our connection's a little bit newer, what has the impact of prayer been on your life, on your devotional walk?
First thing I would say is being even more honest with myself. I feel like I've always had a close relationship with God, but it would be closer in moments of chaos. So when I really needed that connection, I would feel it in moments where I would feel desperation. But through prayer, it just brought me closer to God in every moment and actually have that honest conversation, even when everything is going great. It's like, how can I be even more honest with myself? How can I open even more and more and more? Whereas in the past, like the big openings were when my heart would break open, and now it's like how can I open even when it's soft, even when everything is good? And I feel like that's has been a huge impact in my life.
What has been one of the biggest questions you've had about God?
I guess one of the big things, and I don't know if it's a question, but I guess it is. When I look at every time that I've transformed my life, like whether my fitness journey, my relationship, walk, my business, there's always a moment in time where I'm stuck in a little box where I feel it's easier for everybody else but me. And so the question often is, why me? And so in those moments of questioning, it's like, and I always come back to this feeling like separated from God, separate, or feeling like there's a punishment happening and that God is not present there in that moment when I know God is present. And so that question has been present for me in those moments of like, I feel like there's a wall and I can see you. Why are you not there? And so that question of like, at the same time feeling desperate always brings me back to seeing that God is there also, even when I feel like God is not there. So that's a question that came back to in my life a lot. And I would say that the second one is around money and abundance and wealth. And I feel like there's a lot of programming around in spiritual spaces and like the healer wound of thinking that it to be of service means no money, no abundance. And so one of the questions that has been present in the past few years is like, how can I bring God into that? How can I see myself through money, through abundance, through all of that, through the eyes of God, and kind of deconstruct all the programming that is there? Because in my heart, I know that's not true. So that has been a path as well.
Thank you. When you think about this way that like you've been deepening in prayer and like every day coming to the altar to have the conversation, whether it's at a low heartbreak or a high rejoice, and you're feeling that stable, consistent communication line, and you think about some of the things that God's really been like putting on your heart and the way that God's been loving you, what would be the one thing that you would want to say to the women listening about how God loves you?
Mm. The word that comes in is presence and like full on devotion. It gets me emotional, but it's like no matter what's going on, I know that I'm supported. And even when I cannot see it myself or feel it, it's like there's a parcel of my body, of my being that still knows. And through that, I get to see myself through God's eyes, and it helps me really know myself. And knowing myself through the eyes of God allows me to know God better. And it's like that reciprocal relationship where it goes deeper and deeper. And so presence is a big one. And of course, unconditional. It's like it doesn't matter what I do, it doesn't matter how I show up. It's just I'm here, I'm me, and I get to enjoy life and see life for what it is and come back to it and come back to it and come back to it. And so it's like presence is the moment of like I feel seen, but also present, whereas like I get to always come back and come back. And even when I forget, when I come back again, still there, still there, still there. And having that foundation and that container really shifts my relationship with life itself and how I show up in the world and how I see myself and how I show up in my relationships as well. So it's like, yeah, there's no words.
So gorgeous. Thank you, Lena. Anything else?
I'm complete.
All right, who's next?
I'll go.
Oh, I got Alicia's hand and then a voice from somewhere I don't know.
It was Shanice. But
Okay.
Alicia, do you want to go? You need to go.
Alicia, and then we'll do Shanice. I keep forgetting I'm prompting you guys. Oh my gosh. Hi, Alicia. I love you. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling
Oh.
light today.
Good. Oh, okay. How has God's love changed you in the last year?
Yes, I feel like I've gone through lots of crumbling this last year, but I do feel that it's creating a more secure and stronger foundation than what I've built my self-love and my journey of getting intimate with God over the last 7 years. And this year, it's kind of like, are you going to continue to trust? Are you going to continue to stay focused? And I really feel like that's been like the biggest piece this year is like building like true inner security and stability within myself and within my relationship with God that's not based on anything external.
And how has your prayer life been transforming for you this year?
It's been nice having a daily consistent practice. I feel like I've always had the intention of like tuning in and asking God to like use me and allow me to be connected to being in service. However, like taking the conversation to like a place deeper, I think the biggest thing was learning how to pray and ask for things for myself instead of like being in this place of devotion and how can I serve others, I noticed at one point there was this discomfort of like, but what do I ask for? So having a prayer practice is really allowing me to meet my needs in a more like beneath the surface way of like not needing to even know how to have the right words on what to say, and just trust that like God will show me and reveal to me like the truth of like what I get to hear and see. And I feel like with my prayer practice, it's just been this like resetting of like renewing my mind and opening up my ears more, and like not being so much in my head. And the prayer practice has allowed me to be more in my body.
I feel like I want to give you in particular like free reign of like, what do you want to say about God and about what you've been going through with God? And what do you want to say to these women today? What's the word on your heart, Alicia?
Yeah, presence. It's really been one of my biggest journeys of staying present and getting back into relationship with God. I experienced a lot of trauma physically growing up from my parents and then going to Catholic school. So there was like a big period of life where like saying God or prayer or anything was just very, very sticky for me. But being able to build a foundation with God has been one of the most healing things in the present moment. And it's been a huge anchor point for me to really go on a journey of what it means for me to create my own happiness and to really pursue what gives me a sense of meaning and purpose in life. And yeah, just there's been this knowing that's like you can continue to let God have your back, even in those most difficult of moments. And the prayer practices also remind me that God's always got my back when things are going good, because it's a daily thing. It really resonated with a little bit of what you were sharing, Lena. So thank you. But I do feel that having a relationship with God has allowed me to really persevere. There's a resilience that can awaken within yourself when you're in a relationship with God. I feel like God's really showed me what my true inner strength is. Um, still creating that strength of surrender, and like that's where like God comes in. Is like you don't have to do it all. You don't have to figure it out all. You don't have to know it all. You don't have to be perfect. And I think that's been like the biggest gift of being able to just stay present and just be an active role in like what I want for myself today, and come back to like what really feels true, what really feels in service to my self-love, what really feels in service to the highest good of all parties. And I feel like when you invite God into that conversation, even when things are hard and you're in a decision making moment, if for me, I've made it my choice point to like bring like what would God do in this situation, what would love do in this situation, whether or not I like the answer. I trust in like whatever I do from that point forward, it always comes full circle and there's always a silver lining. And I feel like that's been like my biggest takeaway of like building trust with God over these years.
And how beautiful of an example of like, it does take time to build trust. It takes time in relationship to give a bid for connection, and then you watch God respond, and then you respond, and then God responds. And that is a process. But your testimony of that, and particularly your background of relational abuse tied in with God, most people, what happens is they get stuck in that part of the process. A normal part of healing, or what we refer to as deconstruction in this context of God, we have to step away from the painful environment, or the environment that we've grown out of, or are too big for. And if we're not careful, we can get so jaded that we get stuck in a repulsion or resistance to the good parts of that, right? Because truth and perversion, they run, and there are two rivers that run parallel to each other, right? And so a lot of people will cut their relationship off with God completely, or maybe for our sister that shared earlier, Allison may have cut her relationship off from spiritual earth-based community completely forever. And it's like there's healing that God wants. Like, I want to piggyback off of what Alicia said, is that there's healing that God wants for you, even beyond any potential relational trauma that you experienced in the name of God in the past. And thank you for being like a living example of how much trust gets to be rebuilt in that. Thank you for your testimony, Alicia.
Yeah, this year's been like, yeah, you've got the trust, and how much are you really going to trust? Because my motto has been like, just feel the fear and do it anyway. And I feel like God's like, but do you even need to have the fear anyway? And I'm like, this one's still leaving me thinking like, okay, now what? Like, what is life without a little bit of that fear and resistance? And I feel like that's really what God's like inviting me to crumble so that there can be this true, like, secure, sustainable, like, well-sourced space of like living in embodiment. And that's like where I'm like navigating the waters this last year. And it's been such an honor to be able to be in a space surrounded by so many other women who are also walking a devotional path. And it really, like, this week's call just like cut me so anchored of like, am I going to jump ship, or am I going to keep just steering the ship and trust that, you know, the shoreline is coming, it'll be here soon. So yeah, thank you for this community.
We're so lucky to have you. Thanks for sharing, Alicia. Shanice, and then I'm feeling a call to move to, oh, that would be our last share anyway. I was going to say Opal. So yeah, it makes sense that we would finish with Opal today. All right, Shanice and then Opal.
Hello.
Hi, sweetie. So tell me about why you almost didn't join the ordination program. Or something along those lines. You know what I'm asking.
Like in terms of support.
No, I'm referring to like the depth of what you've walked through in the last year around the questions that you were holding, the resistance that you faced, the pushback that you got back from your community, the fears that you had around being, you know, what's the word? Not infiltrated, but brainwashed.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Tell me
right.
all the things.
Yeah, so yeah, I feel like a lot of like my initial resistance to joining was, it's so layered, but like my resistance to joining and like a lot of what's crumbled the past year has been wrapped around like the trust piece, like trusting the level of support that I get to have, and trusting like, because I feel like before I joined, right, I feel like I already have this really like deep connection to God that I feel through my womb and through my body, and that has really deepened and secured, but there's always been like this weird missing link that I've had to actually being in a community and being in a place where we were all having those conversations and the deconstructing, but that where I could like be seen in that and be supported in that. Because I feel like before I joined, I know like when I had the call with you before I joined, there was like this huge sense of like, I'm doing it all by myself. Like I got it all by myself. And that was just so untrue. But yeah, like it's so funny because like last week there was something that you asked us in the prayer call, and there definitely was like a lot of like jadedness toward being seen in a community, being in a community because of the ways that I felt that I was kind of like casted out from like where I was with everything before. So last week on one of the calls when you were like, allow love in those places where you still feel jaded. And the next day I was like, dang, I really do feel very jaded there, because there's always been this piece of like, can I be myself? Can I fully be myself and be who God called me to be, and be supported in that, and be in community with that, and be held in that, like the holding of that. So it's been a huge unraveling that I honestly wasn't even like prepared for, in terms of like how unsafe and unsupported I felt before, especially when it comes to being in a community that's so like open to these questions and open to these things without there being like a lot of judgment. Because I feel like I kind of come from more in the terms of like there was a lot of judgment and a lot of like it needs to be done a certain way. And that was a lot of what I've deconstructed from. So there was definitely a lot of resistance um well, if I join this space, I can still like be me and be free
Right.
and be
Right.
all of
Yeah.
myself.
So let's highlight that, because that's kind of what I was wanting to get at. Like, thank you for so eloquently expressing that. Was like that and I think we've all felt this, like raise your hand if you've ever felt this, that like in order to be a part of a spiritually oriented space, there's a certain degree of, it's not hazing, but like I think of like, you got to meet these requirements in order to fit into the group, and that's going to cost something of yourself. It's going to cost you some level of authenticity.
Yes.
And that is challenging. That's challenging. So it makes sense to me why, with how deep you had gone in the reclamation of your authentic connection to your creator, that there would be a resistance or a hesitancy to saying yes to being a part of a group because of a not knowing what the requirements for participation would make you sacrifice.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And self-sacrifice is huge in my ancestry and in my generational line has been like, you need to sacrifice yourself for others. And so like reclaiming that and then to open up to a space where, because it's like very vulnerable, right? Because it's like you're opening up to a space of women that like you hardly know, but it's crazy because like once you're in the container, you just feel like everyone, you're so close to everyone because we all just kind of like, we all have this place inside of ourselves that want to feel safe to just be all of who we are, in all of our multidimensionality and like wildness as like woman on a path like this. So I feel like this space like has been really healing, especially since I like lead a group container. So like leading a group container, it was important for me to face my own jadedness and be inside of a sisterhood, right? It's like I'm like out here trying to lead a sisterhood, but I didn't even know my own jadedness with being in a sisterhood without feeling like I'm gonna be like casted out, or like forbidden from the space, or like sharing something that like is taboo or weird or whatever. So it's been really interesting.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to like not make this, I'm just saying this note for myself, like we're not doing this call because I want you guys to all talk about how awesome ordination is, even though it's really freaking cool. I really want to like highlight your process in that. And so like for any woman that is feeling a fear to be a part of community, right? Because like there's a ton of women, like even just like on the feminine healing ministries, like Instagram and stuff, that are like, I kind of want to go back to church, or I kind of want to like do this thing, or I kind of want to do that thing, or maybe they are considering stepping into our free community or whatever. Any woman that's like, I'm terrified of losing a part of myself, but and forcing herself to not have the support that she needs, like what piece of advice would you give that woman as she's journeying with God and trying to figure it out? What would you have to say?
I would say that I think the biggest piece for me, especially recently, is that it's like you meet deeper parts of yourself when you're willing to allow yourself to be met and seen deeper by others, right? Like we can only, I feel like I was starting to kind of come to this place where I was extracting from myself because I wasn't opening up the door to being seen. And I feel like when I opened up the door to being seen and witnessed, like I don't know, it's so funny because like when we were in the Devoted program in December, when we were in Devoted and we were praying, and like all these women were on the call and they were like crying and sharing, and I was just kind of like, oh, we do that here. Like we do that. Like we can we can see each other and be there for each other through these processes. So yeah, I feel like my biggest piece of advice is to like lean into that unsafety that's there, because to feel unsafe is allowed, and that's honestly part of the process. Like, it's not going to just feel safe to join something or to be in a community of sisters that talk about God when, when it's been, we're healing like generations of it. But to just allow yourself to feel that unsafety and to lean in anyways, because it's not gonna feel it's not gonna feel like a dance. I mean, it is a dance, but it's not gonna feel like comfortable. It's going to feel uncomfortable. But I can honestly say, if I wouldn't have like leaned into the discomfort, then I don't think I would be in this place of safety that I'm even in now, for allowing myself to be supported. So support just like has been huge, like that there are women who just like get it.
Is it cool if I piggyback off that? Because I feel like I have a word on my heart about that. Because I've felt that too. Like, because as someone that like everybody in the ordination program knows I have a Christian kink. And so like I go to traditional fundamentalist Christian church every Sunday. And like I'm in that whole thing. And I also live in like the South, so it's a culture. It's a whole culture here. And it's interesting. But because like my roots and like core of me has been just like actually completely deconstructing like fundamentalist religion and like what we've done to our mother and to our native connection with our land and all of that. So it's this really interesting dichotomy. But when I place myself in those communities, or when I first started placing myself in that community, the way that God called me to that community was during a time where I was in such great, immense need. And I had so much fear and jadedness and resistance to who I was telling the story those women would be, and how they would treat me if they found out that, I didn't see the Christ story the same way, or how they would treat me if they found out that I did psychedelics, or how they would treat me if they found out whatever, right? And what I've consistently learned over the last 2 years of boldly being willing to be myself and not shapeshift to be accepted is that when I'm unwilling to abandon myself and I have my own back, not in a defensive way, but just like I've got my own backside, like I'm not willing to leave myself, more often than not, I get met with a lot more grace than I would have expected, even from communities that I would never expect to receive support, love, acceptance, and grace with. And that what do I want to really leave it with? If you're willing to have your own back, there's no place that you can step into that's going to be unsafe for you. Because if it is unsafe, you've got your back, so you just turn in a different direction. So don't withhold the love and support that you're desiring, out of fear. Thank you, Shanice. All right. And I feel like it makes so much sense. Drum roll for like the grand finale. No pressure, Opal. Absolutely no pressure. The grand finale of today's service. Miss Opal, please just take it away. I have no prompts for you.
Thanks.
Just
I was going to ask for some freestyle in this because, yeah, I mean, I have so much to learn from every single share because I'm seeing parts of myself within everyone. So I'm just so grateful to listen and now be here to also share. And I really wanted to share just like pieces of my timeline before I shared parts of my process. And, Adina and I, we've known each other for 6 years now. And, this is a little bit, we're going to rewind about a decade ago, just to when I remember getting in, to one of the biggest fights with my family before I left the house at 15, and kind of like checked out of school for so many reasons and just all of these other things. But I just remember literally screaming the words, "God damn it." And, that was a really unacceptable thing for my mother, but she, physically we got in an altercation. And then 6 months later, after that time, I was just turning 16. 6 months later, I ended up at a private Christian school, not out of punishment, but because that was like one of the last kind of options for me. And in that space we studied a lot about God, and it's like I could always like understand why people would want to be connected to God, but I just couldn't get down with like what I believe are so many distortions of the written word. And there was of course a lot of rebellion in that time, but also in that I stepped away, found a lot of different new age but ancient systems that I was drawn to. But beyond that, I kind of came to just my own connection to nature, and literally Mother Earth beginning to awaken some of my spiritual gifts. And I would get the messages. I mean, I was getting messages about legacy and what we leave behind here, and none of it made sense to me. And so I ended up swinging again back to the Christian side of things and going back to church at 18 years old and seeing people like really come together and pray for the storms to go away. And in the valleys in our lives, not just the physical valley, but those low lows and those high highs of the mountains, the challenges that we walk. And those have been like, the valleys have been really great symbolism in medicine in my life. But just watching, all of the Christian church and people really coming together to pray, I was like, I believe in that. But again, it felt so far away. And so there were so many pieces where, again, they shunned astrology, they shunned Mother Earth. Literally right after them praying for the weather, the next day they'd say, "You cannot worship the earth, that will not save you." And I knew I had to step away from that again. And it was funny because as I was stepping away, there was an elder who came to me and shared with me that she thought I had the spiritual gift of discernment. I had then literally right after that situation had gotten into an abusive relationship that lasted like 18, like fresh adult, like it had lasted from 18 to almost 5 years, 23. And in that it really formed into a spiritual cult where other people, everyone moved off grid and had all of these really great principles and things where we came together, but all of these beliefs and things that like are really beautiful and the values that a lot of people have, I watched them become a slippery slope for distortion, abuse, and like control, shame. And like, I mean, this was in like a space, I never could have imagined this happening in a spiritual space. I could have imagined it happening in the church. I could have. I was shunned in many ways in the church and at Christian school. If I wasn't covering my collarbones, I was going to be in so much trouble. But escaping that cult took almost everything from me, including my life. And it's so true how God is like a grave robber. That's a very common term. Like God truly, I mean, not only was like, Jesus like raised from the dead, like I believe that is like a symbolism of like our own internal process. And just like everything that I've gone through from that time of leaving and like leaving the community space and like literally having to like just trust, like literally put all of my credit, all of my trust, everything in God. I mean, like, it sounds like you just free fall into the universe, but I've been met with, now I've gone through the valley. I kind of go through my own challenges now. I'm still in the process. It's been 4 years of really immense healing and breaking free from all of that space, coming into my purpose and like my true authentic knowing of God was a really dark start. And the past year, especially, I've been kind of how shaming myself. Like, how can I still hold some of the beliefs that that someone who abused me and other people, could believe? And that's when I realized that, sometimes truth can be like used for control and distortion. And so a part of my own homecoming and reclamation has been like coming to my own beliefs. And of course, this space has supported me so much in being able to just come to my own like experience and, the inner knowing and allowing that process to strengthen me and to soften me at the same time. And so like, no, like I'm crying right now, but it's like I'm crying because like I'm no longer that woman that went through all of that. And it's like there's like joy. These are true, like this is true joy. And like the thing is that like people don't tell you that joy also has like this, when you're releasing it all, like you can feel like, the joy through all of it. And yeah, I just want to take a moment to kind of
Wait, hold on. Hallelujah for liberation. Yeah. Yeah.
that word
Yeah.
to this process. I mean, it's truly like even just sharing is a liberation. And I think that beyond it all, that's been God's like hand and God's knowing, and just being able to trust in that has like been able to keep me moving forward when it's like, I used to say that like I'm not going to let these people break me, and it was so true, but I would bend out of shape. And not just, in the cult and in others, like in so many areas of my life, I would literally like get bent out of shape. My dad used to say that to me all the time. And I realized that like until like I really like allow myself to feel the brokenness of my heart and like allow God to like, almost like fill the broken cracks with like God's gold miraculous um power, then that's just how I've been able to open myself up to everything again, life and love. And some other big pieces of this journey have been really just about like others shared like the power to choose and coming back to like our own authority. um that's something that's talked about a lot in spiritual spaces, but like knowing our authority and our power to declare and to speak and to move miracles and also just allow God to sometimes do it for us, but to sometimes like allow ourselves not to do God's work, but to allow God to work through us. And I think one of the biggest realizations that I do want to share is that I went from like being afraid to like ask God for permission to do things, or to can I ask God for this? Can I really do this? And going to like, of course, like there's no problem in asking for God's like hand, God's help in anything that I'm moving through on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, I just have so much like restored hope and faith in humanity and in life and the forgiveness and all of the processes that like I don't know like how it couldn't have not been the way that it was. And then for me to like be here holding what I'm supposed to hold. And so, yeah, I'm just so grateful for God's like hand in everything and getting closer to God and getting closer back to the earth and being able to be just so held and so loved and uh, to cry tears of joy. So,
A danger to hell. That's Opal's tagline. Let's take a breath together. Yeah. And I'm just gonna have a moment with Opal now because we're just starting the process of this story being shared on bigger and bigger stages very soon. And I'm so grateful for your boldness and for your courage. You are so beautiful. And we are truly blessed to have you as a part of our circle and our sisterhood. I'm so grateful that I get to do life with you. You are one of the women whose listening with God is so clear and attuned that when you reflect back to me what you are seeing in your prayer life, especially as it relates to the things that are being created here, like I trust you and I feel so supported by you. And I feel like you have my back in that. I feel like you're an angel in my life. So thank you. And with that whole that time of hearing your story, what came through was like, I've said it in a million ways to you guys, but this time it was like, in order to even trust God at all, we have to trust ourselves because God speaks to us, doesn't speak like we don't know. There's nowhere we can hear God outside of God speaking directly to us. And there's a lot of maybe fundamentalists that would very much disagree with that. But even if it's through his word or a book or whatever it is, like it's directly to us that God is speaking. And so we have to trust ourselves. And to learn how to trust ourselves, we have to go to God for God's help in trusting our own ability to hear God's voice. If we're not sure that we're hearing correctly, that's something that we work out with God. We have to go to God for. But the authority over oneself is the loophole out of abuse. Like the authority with God, to know God, to be with God, to know that God's going to help you trust you is like the safety net, through all of it. And it's a must. It's an absolute must have any relationship with God, And I love your story so much, Opal, because I think that even for those that don't have a maybe narrative about what they've walked through, that they've had to like leave or deconstruct from any kind of like cult-like experience, I think that actually more of us than maybe we would want to admit have been involved in some kind of cult-like spiritual environment, right? And so for the woman listening that's ever felt like someone else's authority had greater value than her own in conversation with God, what piece of advice would you leave her with?
you're asking me, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Um, I would leave us with the advice that wherever that area of like abuse shows up for ourselves, whether we see it in the external world, whether we've seen it in our family dynamics or relationship, or whether it's been in our relationship to ourselves. And when we outsource that power, um, it usually never ends up how we think it's going to, and there's never a great time to, make it all change, and it might not happen overnight or all of those pieces. But um I just wanted to say that there is, purpose and joy available to you now, not just on the other side of all of the possible breakthroughs and ways in which you want the world to be and look like. Um, and the more that you do listen to that and find the ability just to even find just one way to trust yourself, um, is how you're going to get that guidance within to go where you're meant to go in life and go where you're meant to go within as well, to really uh, find greater joy and happiness that you maybe didn't think was available to you or to the world, and just share it. Like, share that, like, find that one thing and then just go and share it, because that's going to amplify things, and that's when you're on like spiritual assignment. So
I love that. What I heard from that is like, go find that one place where you can trust yourself. Go find that one place where you can trust the voice of God within you, and like just go act on it, respond, and you'll get more of it. And that's how we build trust, is like one little yes to what we know, in the way God is speaking to us and through us. So monumental. Thank you, my love. Thanks for taking us home today. All right, let's finish with just a little bit of prayer, and then we'll say bye-bye, shall we? Okay. All right, let's take a deep breath together. Dear God, I just want to say thank you so much for these women's time. Thank you so much for the ways that you have moved through these women's hearts, moved through these women's lives, and given them a story to share with the world. God, I ask that you give every woman, the women that have shared today, the women that have received this call today, the knowing right now as I pray this prayer, this feels like a word for every single woman listening, not 80% of you, not 90% of you, but every single woman listening to this call today, that your story, it matters. Your testimony with God is worth thinking about and articulating and sharing with other people. How has God touched your heart and moved through your life? We need to hear your stories and your testimonies. This is one of the greatest gifts that God blesses us with. This is our contribution. This is our sharing of living water, is the testimony and the story of how love has transformed our lives. So may you have the courage to begin to share that today, to own it, to speak about it, to talk about it, to be unafraid, to express the way that you see love, the way that you see God, and how God speaks to you and through you, so that other women can share that love with you, even if they don't quite understand all of the way. God, thank you so much for this space. Bless this space, and let's just send out a ripple effect of your love. We thank you and we say amen.